Up next in the broadcast, the latest Creative Economy Center opens with a special focus on startups in the ICT sector who want to branch out overseas. The government says it wants to make the area a testing zone for the Internet of Things. Upon his 1 year in office, the Bank of Korea governor faces flak for losing public trust and insufficiently signaling the market on rate policy. But pundits say external economic factors can't be blamed on the central bank leader. And tests show that the controversial U.S. missile defense system that may wind up on Korean soil is 100% effective, but questions remain over whether the simulations reflect real-life performance. Primetime News begins now.
Welcome to Primetime News on this Monday, March 30th, live from Seoul. I am Kang, Chery.
And I'm Sean Lim. Thanks so much for joining us tonight for the top stories this hour. We begin with the latest initiative to help entrepreneurs turn their ideas into businesses. Nearly half of Korea's creative economy centers are now open, with the latest edition opening outside of Seoul this Monday.
And it will focus on supporting startups in the ICT sector and helping them branch out overseas. Our Lee Ji-in reports on the new opportunities.
From messenger and internet portal Down Kakao to game mogul NCSoft, nearly half of Korea's IT firms call the Pangyo Techno Valley home. So it should come as no surprise that the country's 8th innovation center aimed at ICT convergence has opened up in Gyeonggi-do province. President Park Geunhye was at the opening ceremony and announced $95 million in funding to help grow the creative tech industry. The area is set to become a testing zone for the Internet of Things, or the concept that all objects are connected to the Internet. Innovative new projects include a pilot to monitor local youth obesity through wearable devices. The ICT Innovation Center will also act as a financial technology or fintech hub, offering one-on-one mentoring connecting startup entrepreneurs and financial consultants, as well as local banking and credit card companies. But President Park stressed that the center looks outward, beyond Korea's borders.
앞으로 경기혁신센터는 전국 17개 혁신센터의 기업 정보를 DB화해서 해외 투자자와 매칭 서비스를 제공하고 해외 창업 기관과 벤처 투자자, 전국 혁신센터와 대기업 등의 글로벌 네트워크를 두루 연계해서 유망 벤처 기업의 글로벌 진출을 적극 지원하게 될 것입니다. 이를 통해 판교는 우리 중소벤처의 글로벌 진출 베이스 캠프가 되고 경기 혁신센터는 믿음직한 세르파가 돼서 스타트업들의 해외 시장 개척을 안내하게 될 것입니다.
With help from these innovation centers, local firms will be able to exhibit their products abroad at events like the Consumer Electronics Show in Las Vegas and the annual Mobile World Congress in Barcelona. Lee Ji-in, Arirang News.
President Park Geun-hye has asked the heads of Korea's overseas missions to support Korean firms in expanding their business abroad and to help young Koreans find jobs around the world. At an annual meeting, the president talked about seeing great potential to build a new growth engine overseas in the Middle East. President Park also asked the diplomats to spearhead Korea's cultural diplomacy, especially as Seoul plans to establish more cultural centers globally and export Korea's cultural contents. And referring to her unification preparations, she asked that each and every mission to do their part in securing international support for the initiative and in setting the stage for an era of unification. Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol first took up his post last April. He started out strong, receiving a favorable evaluation from the market and political parties. But over the course of a year, those good impressions seem to have faded. Our Shin Se-min tells us more.
Bank of Korea Governor Lee Ju-yeol has received some criticism that he could do more to foster communication between financial bodies and the public, and that he has lost the public's trust. That's the exact opposite of what Lee promised to do last year when he took office. A total of 3 rate cuts also affected this assessment. Lee changed his fiscal policy course from maintaining to slashing the interest rate from 2.5 last August to 2.25%. Last month's rate cut to 1.75 came as a surprise, shocking many market watchers.
The Bank of Korea should be giving the market the right signal on changes to the key rate and create a kind of momentum for them. But that was not the case for the past year.
Snowballing household debt is fueling more dissatisfaction with the BOK governor, as well as the country's continuing feeble economic growth. Despite 3 cuts to the key rate since Lee took over, fears of rapid deflation still linger, with this month's Consumer Sentiment Index and the Business Sentiment Index both lower than last March, which was right before he took office. Korea's economic growth rate also fell from 1.1% in the first quarter of last year to 0.3% in the fourth quarter, staying in the 0% range. Some pundits point out, however, that the country's discouraging figures cannot be blamed solely on the governor.
The sluggish pace of recovery, despite the rate cuts, points to other factors that result in slow growth.
External factors such as slow global economic recovery on top of tumbling oil prices have also played a role in the economic slump. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Korean manufacturers are feeling slightly more confident about the economy this month, but they're still uncertain about future prospects. Bank of Korea's March Business Survey Index for the manufacturing sector went up 3 points to 77 from the February reading. Anything below 100 means pessimists outnumber optimists. Low oil prices and the weakening local currency against the greenback are pointed as possible reasons behind the rise. But the reading is still below 100, and the outlook for April dropped 2 points from the previous reading, a reflection of weak economic projections due to sluggish domestic demand. A widely expected U.S. rate hike and lower global oil prices are hinting at troubles ahead for emerging economies, and that also includes Korea because the first 2 months of the year have shown the country's exports to emerging markets taking a big hit. Kim Min-ji has more on whether it looks like this worrisome trend will continue.
Korean exports to emerging economies took a dive in the first 2 months of this year, casting a cloud over the nation's economy. According to Statistics Korea on Monday, Korea's exports to 18 emerging economies came to nearly $37 billion in the January to February period, down 6.2% from the same period a year earlier. The decline is 3 times bigger compared to Korea's total exports, which dropped about 2% in the cited period. Emerging economies include China, Russia, and India. The decline is a concern for Korea as emerging markets make up about half of its exports, accounting for 45.1% in 2013. But that figure fell to 43.9% last year. Experts say the fall is linked to a widely expected U.S. Federal Reserve rate hike this year. The rate increase could trigger a rush of capital, which can weaken currencies and hurt stock markets of emerging economies. This, coupled with a sharp decline in global oil prices, has hurt oil-producing nations, some of which are also emerging economies. Korea's exports to these countries fell 4.4% in the first 2 months of 2015 compared to the previous year. Given these global conditions, experts say Korea's export outlook remains unclear, and export growth will likely be in the 1% range, down from 2.3% last year. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
When it comes to brand recognition, world-famous hotel chains may have an edge in Korea, but when it comes to customer preference, local chains appear to have a competitive edge.
And as our Sung Ji-sun tells us, there's a new trend toward diversification in the industry that's helping local chains weather unexpected changes.
Korea has its fair share of global luxury hotels. But when it comes to selecting a venue for celebrity weddings or hosting VIPs, it's the local chains that shine. In the latest survey on preferred hotel brands, Local chains like Silla and Lotte came out on top over internationally renowned brands.
The service standards set by global brands may not necessarily reflect the unique service expectation and culture of the local users. On the other hand, local brands like Silla and Lotte have spent many years researching the specific needs and preferences of Korean guests and fine-tuning the product to their needs.
Domestic hotel chains also have an advantage when it comes to revamping their facilities. They have a proven revenue stream that's separate from the hospitality side of the business.
Korean hotels may be better known for hosting VIP guests like foreign leaders and providing venues for celebrity weddings. But the big money doesn't come from room rates or from the high-profile functions. Most of the revenue actually comes from their duty-free businesses.
Lotte and Silla dominate the local duty-free market, and they're also expanding overseas to airports in Singapore and Guam. They've also been quick to get a jump on a different segment of the local hotel market. The two domestic chains are building new mid-range and business hotels, catering to visitors seeking budget rooms with quality services. And given that Korea's hotel industry is expanding by the year, especially with the rapid rise in the number of Chinese tourists to Korea, the hotel room supply is expected to fall short of demand, especially in the capital. Experts say these moves to diversify are helping the industry become more resilient, but they also point out that the local chains must prepare for changes in the market, like the recent drop in the number of Japanese tourists to Korea on the back of the weekend. They encourage hotels to devise strategies for attracting visitors from a variety of countries to mitigate the volatility in the industry. 송지선, Arirang News.
Turning to Korea-Japan relations, it's come to light that Japan's first expression of regret for its colonial rule of Korea dates back to 1984. Documents released by Seoul's foreign ministry show that Japanese Emperor Hirohito said the unfortunate history between the two countries is regrettable. The statement was made during Korean President Chun Doo-hwan's state visit to Tokyo, which was a first for a Korean leader. The files show that Seoul had called for Hirohito's apologetic comments on the wartime atrocities before President Chun's trip. The possible deployment of a U.S. missile defense system THAAD to the Korean Peninsula has been causing quite a stir in recent weeks. But we may be overlooking a fundamental question here, and that is, how well does the system work? Our Kim Hyun-bin tells us more.
In flight testing, THAAD's hit rate is as impressive as it gets. Tested 10 times between 2007 and 2013. The U.S. missile defense system has a track record of 100% mission success. However, that hasn't stopped some defense experts in the U.S. questioning how reliable it really is. In a report submitted to the U.S. Senate Armed Services Committee last week, the Pentagon's Director of Operational Test and Evaluation, Michael Gilmore, said the system has not shown steady progress in its ability to shoot down ballistic missiles in their terminal phase, pointing to examples where the system has some glitches and poor weather conditions during tests. Gilmore stressed that it was important to fix the problems at hand, as THAAD is supposed to be able to work at any time. He also highlighted the need for better training programs for troops who operate and maintain THAAD. The defense official noted that simulators used to train soldiers how to use THAAD are not a completely accurate representation of how the system works in real life, which could lead to errors when intercepting missiles. THAAD has been a hot topic of debate in Korea, as the U.S. has been pushing to deploy the system to South Korea, saying it'll better protect the country against North Korea's ballistic missile threats. Both governments say, however, that the issue has not been formally discussed. But with U.S. Secretary of Defense Ashton Carter scheduled to visit Seoul early next month, watchers speculate THAAD could be on the official agenda. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
China and Russia have been opposing the possible deployment of THAAD to South Korea, reasoning that it threatens their national security. But the new South Korean envoy to China says he doesn't understand why Beijing opposes the idea, as nothing has actually been outlined. Speaking to reporters on Monday, Ambassador Kim Jang-soo said there have not been any technical discussions on the deployment of THAAD with the United States. When asked about North Korean leader Kim Jong-un's possible visit to China, Ambassador Kim said Seoul is not against Pyongyang opening itself up to the outside world. Well, Arirang TV will have a new look starting next week, and thanks to initiatives by the station's new president, among the changes, shows will have greater interactive communication with you via social networking services. Kim Ji-yeon gives us the rundown.
Korea's one and only fully English broadcasting system, Arirang TV, announced its new lineup for 2015. The new programs will launch next Monday, April 6. Arirang TV's president and CEO Kang says one of the big differences is that more programs will invite viewers to interact with shows in real time.
Broadcasting is no longer a communication channel that's one-sided. Arirang TV will do its best to deliver various Korean cultural content and further interact with our viewers in 130 million households in more than 100 countries.
Foreign panelists will play a big role on two new programs. Hosted by Shin Ha-young, Bring It On will give viewers the opportunity to share their opinions with the panel through social networking sites and YouTube. The one-hour program will air every Thursday, 9 a.m. Korea time. Shooters, hosted by Na Seung-yeon, features a multinational group of expats debating the latest social and cultural issues every Friday, 7 a.m. Korea time. Arirang TV is planning to enter the United Nations in-house network this July as an English-based 24-hour news channel alongside CNN International, BBC World, and NHK World. Kim Ji-yeon, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the Germanwings air disaster. Investigators in the French Alps have recovered the DNA of nearly 80 victims from the crash site, accounting for more than half of the lives lost on the plane.
With more, we turn to Paul Yee at the News Center. Paul, this recovery operation has been described as unprecedented. Walk us through some of the changes.
Well, first, there's the mountainous terrain. Though narrowed down, the wreckage from Flight 9525 is believed to be scattered over 2,000 square meters. The violent impact of the crash also left not a single body intact, so forensic experts are relying on samples of DNA to identify the passengers and crew. This as authorities from France and Germany are diving deeper into the mind of the co-pilot who is accused of deliberately crashing the plane. Our Kwon So-hwa has the details.
Forensic teams have made progress in their examination of hundreds of body parts located at the Germanwings crash site in the French Alps and have so far identified the DNA strands of 78 victims. Experts say DNA samples from relatives as well as dental records, fingerprints, and accessories have helped the process. The search for the second black box is still ongoing, showing in this on-site footage recently released by France's Interior Ministry.
The digital flight data recorder, which is made of electronic components and records all the data from the flight, is very important for the rest of the investigation.
In the meantime, German media have been reporting on more details of the terrifying minutes before the crash revealed by the first black box. Co-pilot Andreas Lubitz, who's assumed to have purposely crashed the plane, tells Captain Patrick Sontheimer that he can go to the toilet at any time. When the captain does step outside, the sound of Lubitz locking the cockpit door can be heard. Shortly after, there's a bang and Captain Sontheimer is heard shouting, "For God's sake, open the door," amid the screams of petrified passengers. This as reports surfaced over the weekend that said Lubitz may have not been fit to fly last Tuesday, possibly suffering from a detached retina. They also cited investigators as saying that he was treated by several neurologists and psychiatrists and that a number of prescribed drugs were found at his apartment, suggesting the 27-year-old was a deeply troubled man. The Germanwings crash prompted airlines around the world to change policies, making it mandatory that 2 crew members be in the cockpit at all times. In Korea, those rules already existed at some airlines, but the Transport Ministry is now looking into introducing them on all domestic airlines. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
And turning to Switzerland, top diplomats from Iran and 6 world powers are racing against the clock on the eve of the deadline to reach a deal on Tehran's nuclear program. Iran and the U.S., China, Russia, the U.K., France, and Germany have been holding negotiations since early Monday in the Swiss city of Lausanne. The goal is to curb Iran's nuclear activities in return for rolling back crippling economic sanctions. The British Secretary of Foreign Affairs, Philip Hammond, said he was confident a deal could be reached.
It's in everybody's interest that a deal does get done, but it has to be a deal which puts the bomb beyond Iran's reach. There can't be any compromise about that. So if we're going to get this done here over the next few hours, Iran has got to take a deep breath and make some tough decisions to ensure that those red lines can be met.
Tuesday is a self-imposed deadline for a final framework, while a comprehensive agreement is being sought by June. Amid the deadlock, Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has threatened to leave the talks unless there is a realistic chance for a deal. Shifting to the crisis in Yemen, hundreds of Pakistani nationals are being evacuated from the war-torn region. This as Houthi rebels and government forces continue to battle for the control of the country. On Sunday, Saudi airstrikes against rebel targets near the Red Sea were halted for more than 2 hours to allow the safe passage of planes carrying some 500 refugees. Among many of them landed at Pakistan's capital city, Islamabad, saying they were lucky to be home.
We have come from a war zone which falls under a no-fly zone. People of other nationalities are still there, including those from Egypt, Jordan, and Sudan. Today we knew that the Sudanese embassy had been captured. We are very lucky to have evacuated in time.
According to Pakistan's Foreign Secretary Azaz Ahmad Chaudhry, there is about 3,000 more Pakistanis residing in Yemen. Coalition warplanes led by Saudi Arabia have been bombing insurgents across the Yemeni capital for the past 5 days. And that wraps up our look at international stories for now. I'll see you back here tomorrow night.
Hello everyone, I'm Stephen Che with the Sports Brief, starting with the men's V-League Championships. The Samsung Hwajae Blue Fangs and the OK Savings Bank Russian Cash met for the second match of the series in Daejeon. Now the Blue Fangs needed to make a homestand after dropping the first match, but the Russian Cash weren't giving it away. In fact, they continued their dominance over the defending champions as Simon led the way in the sweeping victory. Now OK Savings Bank is now just a win away from hoisting their first championship and snapping Samsung's streak of 7 straight titles. Moving on, Cha Do-ri is set to start in his final match for South Korea and get the proper send-off that he deserves. Cha will play at right back for one last time in what will be his 76th and final appearance for country against New Zealand in a friendly. He'll be pulled just minutes before halftime to soak in the applause before taking part in a ceremony at the break when he'll be honored for 14 years of service. With Korea the favorites, there's a good chance he'll go out on a winning note. The match starts at 8 p.m. in Seoul Tuesday. Over to golf. The South Korea-born golfer's 2015 winning streak has come to an end at 6 as American Christy Kerr seized the victory at the Kia Classic. Kerr shot an incredible 9 birdies in the final round, finishing at 20 under par and 2 shots above runner-up Lee Min-im, who was in the running until the end. World number 1 Lydia Go finished 3 shots back at third. Still, pros of Korean heritage were exceptional, with 7 of them making it into the top 10, made up of 14 golfers. Finally, 14-time major winner Tiger Woods has fallen out of the top 100 in the official world rankings for the first time in his career. Dropping to 104th, it's been 18 years since the 20-year-old Tiger first jumped into the top 100 after the first of his 79 PGA Tour victories. It reflects a recent downturn in his game. He last played in early February and vowed to stay away until he felt up to par. Woods hasn't yet indicated if he'd return for the Masters on April 9th. That's all I have for now. Your weather's up next. Good night.
Hello, I'm everyone, welcome. I'm Kim Bo-kyung with your weather forecast. We kicked off the week with yellow dust from China, and the microdust index has also risen to the bad levels throughout the country, so those with respiratory problems must take caution. At the moment, as you can see, it is mostly clear skies across, but keep in mind that foggy conditions are limiting visibility on the roads. As for tomorrow, spring showers are set to begin along the west coast before spreading to other regions, and it looks like it'll drop less than 5 millimeters in most places, which will hopefully help add the much-needed moisture to the dry conditions. This afternoon, the mercury rose to the low to mid-20s in most places, but keep in mind that numbers will drop to the single digits as the night progresses. Other than that, those of you in the inland regions could wake up to foggy conditions. Seoul and Gwangju should reach a high of 18, while Daegu jumps to 22. Moving on to other regions, Jeju peaks at 21, Dokdo hits 14, Mount Kumgang hits 11. Those are the updates I have for you now. I'll see you soon.
And that brings us to the end of our broadcast this Monday. I'm Sean Lim. Thanks for watching.
And I'm Kang. Have a great evening, everyone. We'll see you again soon.